Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. For you, it may not be noticeable unless you regularly watch my videos, but for me, it's been about a month since I've been out here. It's been a while since I've recorded a video, but we are back. Unfortunately, it's a very windy day. It's going to be a very hot day. So I'm here at the lake getting as much crawling as I can get done before it gets too miserable. The heat won't chase me away from the rocks, but the heat of the rocks might chase the tires away. Once the rocks get too hot, sometimes you start losing performance on the tires, so we're going to be mindful of that. But up until then, we're going to get as many recorded as we can, and right now we're taking a look at the mud crawler from Cross RC. And there's me being stupid getting on the obstacle. The mud crawler is a more or less an RTR tire. I need to reset the truck and pay attention to what I'm doing. Anyway, trying to come on the obstacle the wrong way. The mud crawler is a RTR tire from Cross RC. It comes on several of their vehicles. I got mine on the NT4 is what mine came on. But they also do sell these tires individually, which we will talk about in a little bit. So coming onto our side hill now, driver error aside, no real issues getting on, but what we're going to try to do is put our driver side tire below this line. If we can get driver side below that line and successfully run this side hill, that's very good performance. If we have to get the driver side tire above that line, that's just slightly worse. The difference is above that line, you don't have to deal with some of the pockets, and it's not quite as steep, especially when you have to turn up and reposition. Going across that line tends to upset tires with a little less grip. Inside the mud crawlers, of course, we do not run factory foams. The factory foams that come with these are actually not over hard as a lot of RTR tires are, or RTR foams are. They're pretty soft. But we are running Three Brothers 3D inserts today. And so far, the mud crawler doing well. Not seeing excessive side slide, but the rear is sliding just enough to allow for the pivot. Although right now we might get into an issue as I've got the rear tire in that crack. So we're going to take it real slow. Hobbywing 2300 Fusion Pro really able to get me out of some of these situations just with insanely low throttle speed. And there we go. Repositioning doing well. As you know, here in Kansas, where I crawl is mostly sandstone. So while I am on high grip surfaces, some of these surfaces are still pretty slick, and this side hill is actually a pretty challenging obstacle because although it is high grip, it's very, very uneven. There's lots of pocketing, lots of cracking, and lots of elevation changes. Part of this obstacle is a little less than 39 degrees. Part of this obstacle is up to the steepest portion I've measured on it is 47 degrees down in this corner. But typically where we drive on it, we are between about 40 and 43 degrees in most of the areas. So it's not overly steep, but the cracks and pockets in this obstacle really do tend to put a tire through its paces in side hilling, especially in repositioning on side hilling. One thing that I don't notice a lot on some reviews is they side hill, but they don't reposition on a side hill. And in most cases, if you enter a side hill, you've got to exit that side hill. And a lot of times, well, in all cases, if you enter it, you got to exit it. But in most cases, it's not always just drive straight across. A lot of times you've got to turn up or do something like that, which is why I like this obstacle. Coming up to our second obstacle now, the lake back down to normal levels. If you've seen the last couple weeks of videos, the lake was very high, but we are back down to very normal levels now. So onto our second obstacle, we've got a pretty steep incline on a pretty slick rock. And we have a couple different ways to enter this obstacle. Right now we are taking the more difficult path. And guys, I apologize if there's excessive wind noise. I've got a lapel, but I really hate using it. I don't like the way it captures audio and the way that it's only voice and you don't get any other sound. So if I can avoid it, I'm not going to use it. But if the wind gets too bad today, we're supposed to get like 33-mile-an-hour gusts later on today. So if it gets too bad, I might have to switch to it. So if this video has too much wind noise, apologies. Mud crawlers having an issue getting up on the obstacle here. They're not able to pull themselves up basically on this slick surface. We don't have anything good to push up against on the ground, so it's really dependent on forward drive to be able to do this. So let's back off and take the little bit easier line on. Some stuff with this obstacle seems to have changed. I think some of it might be from when the water was up. It shifted some rocks, but it looks like somebody's been down here and may have made a fishing platform or something. The rock that I use to exit this obstacle is always missing, and it's missing again. I don't understand. Like, people specifically, I guess, like that rock, because it's a big rock. It doesn't move on its own. Right now, the rear bumper is hung on this rock. Tires with more grip are able to go ahead and pull it off. The mud crawler not able to do so. Let's feed it some wheel speed. Ooh, wheel speed might be the trick here if we can get across. Okay, well, we slid off, but I think wheel speed might be the trick if we can get across and hook the side lug or hook that passenger side on the other side of this rock. We might be able to get up, but it's definitely not going to be consistent. It's definitely, then we get lots of hop. Now, some of that is going to be from the 3D insert, which is one of the reasons why 3D inserts are not my favorite thing to run for rock crawling. Love them for trails. But it's definitely not traction hop, because traction is not something that we have right now. I don't think the mud crawlers are going to make it. Joining in the ever increasingly long list of tires that have failed this obstacle. We're going to give them one more chance. Again, this is the easier path. And all we really need to do is be able to shoot across. Oop. On the plus side, it looks like loose surface, like dirt, that these do pretty well in, which would make sense. They're a pretty deep lug tire. They're called mud crawler. But we're going to fail this obstacle. It is not going to make it up obstacle 2. A lot of trash down here. I'm going to have to come down here with a bag and clean up after some people. Somebody who had a fire. They made a makeshift fire down here and were obviously hanging out and drinking and eating Doritos and decided that they didn't need to clean up after themselves. That's the most frustrating part about crawling in state parks and stuff, is you see how trashy some people are. This obstacle is one of our newer obstacles. It used to not actually be an obstacle. It was just kind of a transition between obstacles. It's not overly difficult, but there are some technicalities to crawling it, so that's why we have made it an obstacle. And the mud crawler not really having any issues here. Able to do this just fine. I took that line a little bit wrong. That is the fault of the driver right there, not the tire. The reason that I used to not record this is because walking up this is pretty uneven. But since I switched from the tripod to the chest mount, it's a little easier. But I have really got myself in a, there we go. Got myself in a bad situation there by driving it wrong. And that's what I mean by this is a more technical obstacle than it is a, difficult obstacle. But what you need from the tire is decent positionability. You need it to be able to steer well and kind of drive where you're pointing it. And you need some forward drive as well. During this test, if I refer to these as black rocks, I do apologize. Black rocks are another tire from Cross RC, and when I was putting tires in the bag and getting stuff ready for today, I went ahead and mounted a set of black rocks that I didn't bring with me, but I'm going to test them and the next time I come out here. And Black Rock is a better name, and I kept kind of just in my head referring to these as black rocks. So, oh, sorry. That's me watching the screen, not watching the truck. Another thing that I'm trying to learn how not to do when I'm out here filming. Especially now with the chest rig, because I have to like look down to see the camera instead of being able to stand a few feet behind the tripod and just have it in my field of view. Obstacle 3, no issues, really. A lot of tires struggle to get up here. What you need from this obstacle, or what you need out of a tire on this obstacle, is the ability for the lugs to hook the edge of this rock and kind of pull it up. And with a deep lug, the mud crawler not having any issues there. And although we are a fairly like rubber feeling compound, and it's not sticky feeling, we actually seem to be doing pretty well so far, which is a little bit surprising, because as you will see in the well, just the end of this video when we do a wrap up, the design of the mud crawler is very similar to my least favorite tire in existence, which is the Boom Racing Hustler. The lug between this and the Boom Racing Hustler is not identical. I don't think that one copied the other. I think it's similar, but it's like kind of strikingly similar. And that was my first impression of this is, ooh, this tire might not be that good. It's the same lug design, or a similar lug design as the Hustler. But that is just more proof that the compound that they use on the Hustler, that Boom Racing chose, is awful. Well, really, that they use on any other tires. I've tested the Hustler in 2 compounds, and it sucks in both. And although this is not a review of the Hustler, you know I can't help myself to talk about how bad that tire is any chance I get. And although we are due for very hot weather today, right now it is very nice. It's in the probably mid to high 70s right now. It is 8:10 in the morning. The sun's just starting to get up into the sky. The breeze is blowing, but not too bad yet. And boy, I'd be happy if it stayed like this all day. But unfortunately, it's only going to get windier and hotter. At least if the forecast is correct. Obstacle number 4, not really a difficult obstacle as we come down this rock. The purpose of this obstacle is to test descending positionability. You need to be able to start down this rock and then turn in without sliding too much. And the mud crawler not having any issues there. And so we come up to our next part, the first part of the next obstacle. It's kind of a 3-piece obstacle. And right here is definitely not a hard part, but it's very slick. Those rocks have lost all of the sandness of the sandstone. And so tires without good grip, even though there's no heavy edges or anything there, they tend to struggle to get onto it. But we did not see that with the mud crawler at all. And of course, coming on to the next part, we have a smooth edge of the rock right here. Right now, the rear tires can sometimes help push the front on, but then once the front are on, they really have nothing to grip, and we're dependent on the rear tires to be able to hook the edge of that rock and push us up. But right now, we do not have a good combination of grip between the front and rear to even get on here. the front not able to grab the smooth edge of that at all, the rear having trouble grabbing the lip on these lower rocks. Not sure if you can hear it over the wind, but a fair amount of lug noise as they try. Let's give them a little reposition. Because sometimes getting onto an obstacle is about finding your line, but I don't think the mud crawlers have a magic line. I'm going to try one more thing here. Can we push up onto here? Yes. And reposition. There we go. Oop. Slid right back down where we were. So now we go to wheel speed. Speed kind of bumped us up, but not straight. Ugh, combination of the 3D inserts and the kind of just rubber compound of this tire rather than being a sticky, you know, magic compound like some tires come in. It's not doing well. We are just kind of digging a rut right here. Try one more time coming on this way. Not able to find an angle that the mud crawler, ooh, there we go. Kind of a fluke possibly, but it did get up there. I don't know how easily you could and consistently you could repeat that, but we did get on. And now here, once again, we have two edges that don't have a lot of grip or surface for the tire to hook onto, but able to kind of get up there. But the problem is now the driver's side of the truck is going to be completely hanging off the rock, so we need to be able to reposition. There we go. That's not too bad once up on the rock. That's pretty good performance. Getting up there was a little bit of a struggle, and I don't know how consistent that would be, but we were able to get it. I brought a couple fishing poles with me and some tackle, and had planned on doing some fishing and maybe, there's a new log in the way. There we go. Thought maybe I'd even record a fishing video, but I think the wind is going to keep me out of the water today. The spot where I like to fish, the wind is going to kind of be coming inshore, not going away from shore, and I get enough fishing done at home at our little pond that I no longer have the desire to fight the elements when I'm fishing. Purpose of this obstacle here is to come down nice and slow, and we want the rear tires to hold the truck enough to not drop it on its face, and we need the front tires to be able to position well enough for me to take the right line down this obstacle to not roll out. Now, what we do frequently see with a lot of tires is it will kind of dump the truck on its nose, but if the rear doesn't slide too fast, it will do it in a way that I can recover, like from a nose wheelie, rather than just flipping it end over end. Right there is what I'm talking about. Good recovery. Nice job from the mud crawler. And the second part of this obstacle, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're going to walk passenger side down the edge of this rock, and driver side we press up against this rock, and often what you will see is the rear want to come up and over the front. And so what we're testing here is basically control how well do the front tires hold to not allow the rear to just come up and over. And really well there, the rear didn't come over at all. Now, typically that means that we don't have an excessive amount of grip in the front tire, but we have enough to where it doesn't start sliding. Because if it starts sliding, a lot of times it'll just tumble forward. But if the tires have too much grip, a lot of times the rear just wants to come over. So It's kind of a weird balance of a tire not being too good, but also not being too bad. When I said too good and too bad, what I really mean is too much grip and not enough grip. Believe it or not, in a crawler tire, there is such thing as too much grip, especially depending on the surfaces you're crawling on. Me crawling on sandstone, too much grip can definitely be a thing. I don't run a lot of like ultra sticky compound here. I won't run Predator most of the time, except for in the actual winter. You know, here in Kansas, we get all 4 seasons. So summer, 100, 105 degrees is not uncommon, which on the rock surface, that usually translates to 120 or 130 degrees. And in the winter, you know, we get negative temperatures sometime, sub-zero, definitely well below freezing. So sometimes I'll use Predator in the winter. In the summer, the rocks typically get so hot that it just turns them into melty slop. And then in those kind of between seasons, they do okay, but sometimes, like I said, on sandstone, it just kind of tears them up. They're too soft and too sticky of a compound for where I crawl most of the time, and they just kind of get torn up and they don't last very long. Up here is our most difficult obstacle that we are going to do today. Typically what we've got to do is over on this edge of the rock, we have to hook the side lug and use side lug to pull us up. Getting over to that edge, if we can do it with very little throttle or very little wheel speed, that would be the most desirable. Most tires have to use some wheel speed. There have been a few exceptions where tires have crawled up this without having to hook that edge at all. They've kind of went right up. The Upgrade RC Rock Claw being one of them. The RC 4-wheel drive Compass being another one. Both those tires are exceptional tires, very good performing tires. And both of them pretty surprising how good they performed. But I don't think we're going to get low speed hook on the mud crawler. Although this is kind of better than I was expecting. We're not seeing a whole lot of slide back, which gives me hope for the upcoming obstacles. So I think we just need to give it a little bit of wheel speed. Well, and this is the problem that I'm noticing with the mud crawler and wheel speed or bump, is it doesn't do so very predictably. When you apply wheel speed on an incline and it hits any unevenness in the surface, it tends to just choose a direction and go that way. Usually that's a lug design issue. And the lug on this tire is I would say, the way it's designed, how do I put this? It's not necessarily uniform, maybe. So it doesn't surprise me that we have that struggle with this tire. There we go. Well, but we slid back too far. I don't think we're going to be able to, well, it would be cheating anyway. Can we recover though? No. So positioning with this tire when you're driving on a smooth surface, there we, oh, too far. Didn't let off the throttle soon enough. A little bit of driver error there. But if you have a smoother surface, these track pretty well and they're pretty predictable. But you can see the surface of this rock is, again, very pocketed, very common with sandstone. We see that a lot. And that's why when people talk about how, well, sandstone's a high grip surface, that's easy to crawl on. Not all sandstone is easy to crawl on, just because, ooh, that wasn't bad. I might have, with the right amount of concentration and the right number of tries, this might be able to make it up this obstacle without hooking the side lug, just with wheel speed. That was interesting. I've got the passenger side front tire in the most difficult part of this kind of side lug hook. There we go. There's a spot in this rock right there that it's just kind of, the way it's shaped makes it kind of difficult. But this is what we need to do right there. Now the side lug on the mud crawler is not a very pronounced side lug. It's not very big, so definitely having to kind of be diligent about going up there. But we were able to do it, and honestly we're able to do it without too much drama. It took a couple of tries. Now I'm getting hung on the slider, getting off the obstacle. Once again, the natural elements always changing, kind of shifts rocks around sometimes. But really that wasn't too bad. That was a decent showing from a ready-to-run tire. Honestly, so far, I'm very impressed with the Mudcrawler. I don't know why it's hard for me to remember what this tire is called. Every time I say it, I have to pause and think, what's this tire called? But anyway, I'm pretty surprised at this tire. You know, it's an RTR tire. It's from Cross RC, which I'm not throwing shade at Cross RC. I really like Cross RC. I have a number of their vehicles. But, you know, I would say it's not one of your, at least in the United States, it's not one of your more well-known brands. It's not one of your more popular brands. And just the fact that this tire, getting over the hang up here, the purpose of this obstacle right here is to hang that rear pumpkin and see how much grip we have in the front tires to pull it off. Not too much drama there, a little bit of a hesitation, but nothing too major. But anyway, just being a lesser known brand and you know, Cross, they have a decent amount of different vehicles, but they do a lot with scale military vehicles, which are not necessarily rock crawlers. They're scale trucks that you can drive. So I am somewhat impressed that the Mudcrawlers are hanging with a select group of tires that you pay real money for, you know, quote, aftermarket tires. They're doing as well as a pretty big swath of your aftermarket stuff. Although I say pay money for, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Our last obstacle before we hit the trail, and we're having trouble getting up onto it right now. I'm dealing with a little bit of a hang up of that rear bumper, and I think some of the rocks on my entry have shifted. Oh no, they haven't shifted. It's just not able to do the hook. There we go. Get that front. Maybe they have shifted. I need to go back and look at it. I have a picture of this obstacle because the entry of it is so built up. I had to build it. So I have a picture that I need to look at and see if something happened. Because I'm struggling to get up on the obstacle, which only a few tires have done that. And it's, you know, this is what's great about testing tires on more than one obstacle. And this is why it frustrates me when I see a lot of tire reviews that are 7 minutes long and they've driven it on like a hand-built wooden course or, you know, just over a couple of rocks. Is a tire can do really well on certain obstacles and really bad on other obstacles, and you don't really get the full idea of how a tire performs unless you run it on different kinds of obstacles. And I'm not saying my course here presents every kind of a challenge that a tire is going to face, far from it. But, you know, it's just amusing to me how many reviews seem to spend more time taking it out of the box and talking about how it looks on the workbench than they do driving it over actual rocks. Some of these guys are huge channels. Well, I don't think we're going to get on the obstacle. But again, I'm going to pause here and take a look at my photo because I don't want to have to come back down here and run it again if this entry is torn up. Okay, well, the entrance has not changed at all. The Mudcrawler just not able to get up. We're going to give him one more chance before we fail the obstacle and take the bypass. Right here is where we struggle because we have to come up and then we need to turn to avoid this tree. And the rear are not able to push it up and over. And now the front starts sliding sideways, which causes the whole truck to shuttle to the side. And now we've got a pretty decent gap on that rear tire to be able to hook up onto the rock. And then we roll out. So we'll fail that. See if I can get it coming up the bypass. And the nice thing, the bypass on this obstacle is not exactly a cakewalk. Well, I say that and then it has no issues. Some tires struggle on the bypass, I guess is what I would say. So now we come up to what is my personal least favorite part of this course, which are the trails. And mostly that's just because I'm not a huge trail driver. I've been getting more and more into it. But the trails here teach. They show loose surface transition. They show how a tire deals with maybe looser dirt, sticks, stuff like that, transitioning between different kind of terrains. And then we've got some slicker rocks that we kind of exit off of onto a steep incline that sometimes has very loose gravel on it and kind of tests its tires' hill climbing capabilities. But sometimes that rock is, depending on whether we've got recent rain or not, sometimes that rock is actually kind of packed down and it's basically just driving up a hill. So this last rock right here is where we sometimes struggle. As you can see, the edge of this rock kind of has been eroded away. It's very smooth. There's no jagged edges for a lug to catch onto. And a shocking number of tires struggle to get onto this very easy looking obstacle. The mud crawler not having any issues getting on, but now we're going to slide off because we're having trouble maintaining our position. I need to be able to come up this corner because, as you can see, then we start having a gap that is too large for a class 2 tire to deal with, at least on a mostly RTR truck. Again, Tire Rack is not built to be a line slayer. He's not built to be a comp crawler. He's built to be mostly an everyday rig that is somewhere between out of the box and customized that your average person might have. So you can see how a tire does on an average rig. Wind really coming up now. All right, we're gonna give it a little bit of juice. There we go. A little bit of a struggle there, but we're able to do it with the right amount of throttle modulation. And now we see how the gravel hill climb goes. Gravel not too set in. Looks like we got pretty loose up there. There we go. This is where we start seeing a little bit of digging. And we want to be able to do this at lowest throttle if possible. Of course, wheel speed will get pretty much any tire up here. I don't think a tire has ever failed this obstacle completely, but there's some that have had to take it at like full throttle and kind of bounce their way up. But the mud crawler is not really having any issues with that. Whew. That guy will probably take his web down in a couple hours. I don't see the point in destroying it. If you watch some of my videos, you know that I like to come out here and camp. Not camping tonight. I've got to be home early in the morning, and being that it's going to be so hot, I don't want to spend a night in misery and jet home at 4 in the morning and then have to take a shower and everything. So I'm going to go home and get a good night's sleep. So we've just come out for the day, but a day we will have. So how do the mud crawlers do? Well, for an RTR tire, I would say they're pretty good. If you compare this against an Axial tire or even like a Canyon Trail, this is probably this is on par with a non-S1 cut Canyon Trail. Maybe on par with an S1 Canyon Trail uncut. Pretty good RTR tire. But there is a massive elephant in the room that we need to talk about, and that is the cost of these tires if you buy them not on an RTR rig. Now, as you know, Axial, Vanquish, a lot of these other companies, they have tires that are RTR tires that come on a rig that you can also buy separately. And most of those tires run between $30 and $33 for a pair, which is high for an RTR tire. I mean, at that point, you've passed J Concepts prices. You're approaching Proline prices or Upgrade RC prices, if you have to choose between the two, I would recommend Upgrade RC over Proline, because Horizon is evil and has made Proline into an evil company as well. But nonetheless, you can also buy the mud crawlers independently. The problem is these are $46 for a pair. $46 for 2 tires. The most overpriced crawler tires on the market, in my opinion, are Pitbulls, and some of their tires run $50 a pair. Pitbulls are overpriced because I don't think they're great tires, but they're better than these. Well, some of their tires are better than these, some of them aren't, but not all their tires are $50 a pair. These are almost $50 a pair for a RTR tire that admittedly is a decent RTR tire, but what the hell? $46 a pair. Now, that price is on Cross RC's website. It is their US website. And I don't know how much those prices have been impacted by tariffs. I'm not sure if these have always been around that price, or if they used to be significantly cheaper, but tariffs has impacted the price. But the thing is, that price is from their US website, and the other stuff on their US site doesn't seem to have been impacted by tariffs in the same way. For instance, the NT4, which is one of the rigs that this tire comes off of, that's the rig that this exact tire came off of. That's an RTR crawler with portals, with a 2-speed transmission, with a unlockable front differential, a pretty cool Unimog body, and that whole rig is $379 ready to run. So I don't really know what's going on with the price of these, but they've priced themselves out of recommendation. Because honestly, if this was $20 a pair, I'd be like, get them. Especially if you're a trail guy who kind of hits the rock sometime, these would be an awesome tire, because with the way the compound is, I think they're going to last a long time. I mean, there's no feathering on the edge of these lugs at all. And after taking them on the course, and of course, you know, I've only run these. That was the first time I've run this tire. But I think they'll last a long time. Just my experience in the hobby and the way this compound feels, I can tell you that this is going to be a pretty long-lasting tire. And at least on Sandstone, on my course, they did a pretty good job. They failed a couple obstacles, but they didn't fail anything that I would consider an easy obstacle, and they did a lot better than I thought they would on most of the obstacles. So I would call this like a Trail Plus tire. It's going to handle trails well. It's going to handle loose surface well. I have a feeling it's going to handle mud really well. I mean, it's got very deep lugs. They've got good spacing between them, so they should clear out well. You know, obviously I haven't tested them in mud, but again, speaking from experience, they're going to handle mud well. I think you could even improve them more by this little triangle in the lug. If you cut out those smaller lugs, I think you could improve the performance of these even more. So they're a decent tire, but I can't tell you to go buy them because they're too expensive. $20, maybe even $25 a pair, I could kind of recommend them. But for $46 a pair, no, absolutely not. So if you have a Cross RC vehicle that these came on, which is an NT4, I think this came on their XT4, I think is what the model was. I think these have come on 3 or 4 different of their trucks. So if you have the tires, they're not bad, but I wouldn't go buy them. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's up with some of these companies charging so much for RTR tires. Even the big ones like Axial and Vanquish and stuff. Like, an RTR tire, in no circumstances an RTR tire the best tire you can get. The best RTR tire that I have tested so far on camera is the RC 4-wheel drive Mickey Thompson Baja MTZ, the P6 or P3. It comes on the C2X crawler. That's the best RTR tire I've tested to date, but I mean, it was a good tire, but it's not a top performer. And these aren't as good as that. And those tires, if you buy them by themselves, are less than $30. I think they're $26. They're $20 less a pair, $40 less for a set, and they're better. So, unfortunately, I like this tire, but I can't recommend it because it's too damn expensive. However, if you already have it if you bought a Cross RC and they came on it, or you can probably find these on eBay or something for cheaper, like a RTR pole, then they're pretty good. If you need a decent trail tire that can also handle some rock crawling and you like the look of them, yeah, they'll do the job, but they're too damn expensive. So, till next time, everybody, have a good one.